Okay, so we're diving into some seriously dark history today.
Yeah, buckle up.
Jack the Ripper, 1888, Whitechapel.
London's underbelly.
Exactly, and we're going deep. Using all these, I mean, we've got a ton of sources here.
Trying to cut through the fog.
Yeah, like what are the actual facts about this case? What really happened? Because, I mean,
It's a legend.
it's shrouded in mystery.
Exactly.
So Whitechapel, 1888, paint the picture.
Well, if you can imagine London, but not the London, we think of today.
Right, not Big Ben and all that.
No, the East End.
The impoverished side of things.
Yeah, this was the Whitechapel district.
And this figure, this killer, he's got a few names, right?
Yeah, so we've got, obviously, Jack the Ripper is the one that sticks.
That's the one everybody knows.
Exactly, but also the Whitechapel murderer.
Right, more descriptive.
And then there's Leather Apron.
Okay, that one's new to me.
Yeah, that was kind of a figure, maybe not as well defined, that was kind of circulating before.
Before the Ripper really hit the scene.
Exactly. There were already whispers,
Okay, so the victims, tragically, were
Women mostly, working as prostitutes.
in the slums, right? I mean, you said impoverished, but it was like
It was dire.
beyond dire.
These women were just trying to survive.
And the way they were killed, I mean, I don't even know if brutal covers it.
Brutal doesn't even begin to.
But throats cut,
It's just
and then the mutilation.
yeah, abdominal mutilations. It was horrific.
And in some cases, they took organs,
Yeah, internal organs removed.
which makes you think, like, did this guy have some kind of anatomical knowledge?
That's a speculation, right? Was he a surgeon?
Yeah.
A butcher?
It adds this whole other layer of, like, macabre.
To an already terrifying situation.
Absolutely chilling. And the media, I mean, they went crazy, right? Especially in September, October of 88.
Oh yeah, it was a frenzy.
It was like Jack the Ripper was everywhere.
It's almost where the name really took hold, wasn't it?
Yeah, the media kind of like blew it up, made him a star in a way.
Very dark star.
A very dark star, absolutely.
Yeah, but you can't talk about Jack the Ripper without talking about the letters.
Right, the letters. So the Dear Boss letter, is that the big one?
That's where the name Jack the Ripper first appears.
So supposedly written by the killer himself.
Boasting, bragging.
Yeah, look what I did, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Exactly.
But like, is it real?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
I mean, some people think it's a hoax,
Maybe journalists trying to stir the pot.
sell some papers, I guess.
It wouldn't be the first time.
No, certainly not. And then there's the From Hell letter. That's the
Yeah.
one that really
That one's really disturbing.
sent to George Lusk, right?
Yeah, of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee.
Okay, and that's where it gets, like, really real.
Because he sent half a kidney
A human kidney.
preserved,
Right.
allegedly from one of the victims.
Oh, God, I mean, talk about solidifying your image as a monster.
Right. I mean, imagine the terror.
It's hard to even fathom.
Yeah, the fear that gripped Whitechapel, it was real.
And like you said, the media amplified it all.
Absolutely.
It's like this perfect storm of horror.
You've got the brutality, the mystery, the unknown, and then the press just fanning the flames.
Right, feeding the frenzy.
Exactly.
And, there were a lot of murders happening around that time.
Yeah, it was a dangerous place.
But there are 5 that are, like, the core.
The canonical 5, they call them.
Okay, so let's name them. Who are the canonical 5?
Okay, so we have Marianne Nichols,
Okay,
Annie Chapman,
got it.
Elizabeth Stride,
Right.
Catherine Eddowes,
And Mary Jane Kelly.
Mary Jane Kelly. Their names are forever.
Linked to this.
To this horror, and it all happened so fast, right?
Yeah, a very concentrated period.
Just a few months, like end of August to early November of 88.
A reign of terror.
And they never caught him.
Never definitively identified.
Mystery remains.
And that's part of the legend, isn't it? It is. It's like Jack the Ripper is this mix of fact and folklore.
And probably some made-up stuff too,
Oh, absolutely. People love a good, scary story.
Yeah, it sells.
It sells, but okay, to really understand this, we have to go back, right, to Whitechapel itself.
Yeah, we need the context.
Mid-19th century. What was life like there?
It wasn't pretty.
Not the romanticized Victorian London we see in the movies.
No, far from it.
So what was it like?
Okay, imagine this. You've got a massive influx of Irish immigrants.
Looking for work, a better life.
Exactly. And then later, Jewish refugees fleeing persecution.
So a lot of people coming in
Way too many people.
for a place that's already,
Overcrowded.
the infrastructure was crumbling, the
Right.
resources were stressed thin.
The work conditions, the housing,
Abysmal.
abysmal. And you had said this earlier, but it's a stat that really sticks with me.
The child mortality rate.
Yeah, over half the children born in the East End didn't make it to 5 years old.
Think about that.
It's heartbreaking. Desperate times.
So you've got poverty, you've got overcrowding, you've got like a sense of hopelessness.
And that breeds crime, violence,
And alcohol dependency.
a way to escape, or at least numb the pain.
And for women, tragically, prostitution became a means of survival.
A last resort, a lot of times.
The police in October of '88, they estimated there were over 60 brothels in Whitechapel.
62 to be exact.
62, and something like 1,200 women working as prostitutes.
Imagine that just to survive.
And that made them vulnerable, right?
Absolutely. Easy targets.
You mentioned the common lodging houses earlier. Tell me more about that.
So these were basically massive, overcrowded rooms.
People sleeping everywhere.
Yeah, you could rent a bed for a coffin bed, they called them.
Rim.
Or if you couldn't afford that,
There were the ropes.
yeah, literally you'd rent a rope and lean against it for the night.
I can't even imagine.
It was that bad.
Just the level of desperation,
Yeah, and it wasn't just the poverty, there were these underlying tensions too.
social tension.
Yeah, this was a time of demonstrations, protests, clashes with the police.
Unrest.
Exactly, like Bloody Sunday in '87, a year before the Ripper murders.
And beneath it all, there was prejudice.
Oh yeah, anti-Semitism, nativism, racism,
People looking for someone to blame.
a scapegoat,
And Whitechapel, with its immigrants, its poverty, it became
the target.
this kind of like symbol of immorality.
A place where something like the Ripper murders could happen.
It's like the stage was already set, wasn't it?
Yeah, a perfect breeding ground for fear and violence.
And then, into this already volatile mix, you add Jack the Ripper,
And the media frenzy,
amplifying it all.
a recipe for terror.
So we've got this picture of Whitechapel, right?
The historical context, the hardships, the tensions,
That community on edge.
and that's where this story unfolds.
And in part 2, we'll get into the specifics of the murders.
The investigation, the suspects, the theories.
The legend of Jack the Ripper.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back after the break. All right, we're back, and it's time to get into the really grim details.
The murders themselves.
Yeah, the sources we've got here, they paint a pretty vivid picture.
Of the brutality, the investigation, the whole Victorian London scene.
And we got to start with the canonical 5, right?
Absolutely. Those are the core of the Ripper story.
Nichols, Chapman, Stride, Eddowes, and Kelly.
Their stories are intertwined with this horror.
So what made these murders so distinctive? What made them the Ripper murders?
Well, the most obvious thing is the throat cuts. They were savage.
Like a signature?
Yeah, and then there were the abdominal and genital mutilations.
Horrific.
And not just cuts. In some cases, he removed organs.
Which, again, raises that question of, like, anatomical knowledge.
Right, was he a doctor?
Yeah.
A butcher? Someone with a knowledge of the human body?
It's chilling. And it seems like as the murders went on, the mutilations got worse.
Yeah, there was an escalation.
Except for Elizabeth Stride.
That's the anomaly.
Right, her case is different, less mutilation.
So, was he interrupted? Did he know her? It's a mystery.
It throws a wrench in the whole, like, pattern.
Makes you wonder.
And then there are all the other murders that happened around the same time.
Yeah, Whitechapel was a dangerous place.
But were they connected to the Ripper?
That's the big question.
Like Emma Elizabeth Smith and Martha Tabram, they were killed before the canonical 5.
But the methods were different.
Tabram was stabbed multiple times, right? Not really the Ripper style.
So maybe a different killer.
Possibly. And then you have the later murders like Rose Mylett, Alice Mackenzie,
The Pinchin Street torso.
Francis Coles.
And again, the methods vary. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes not.
It's like, are we looking at one really messed up individual or like a whole bunch of them?
It's a valid question.
And then there are the alleged victims who maybe weren't really victims.
Like Fairy Faye, probably a fictional creation of the press.
Right, they loved a good story.
And then others, like Annie Millwood, Ada Wilson, Annie Farmer,
Their connections to the Ripper are less clear.
maybe attacked, maybe not. The evidence is murky.
And then there's the Whitehall mystery, the headless torso.
Happened around the same time as the Ripper murder.
But different MOs, right?
Yeah, the mutilations are different.
So maybe another killer altogether.
The torso killer.
God, it's like Victorian London was just awash in violence.
It was a dark time.
Okay, let's talk about the investigation. What did the police do?
Well, they did what they could with the resources they had.
Which weren't much by today's standards.
No DNA testing back then.
So what did they do?
House-to-house inquiries, tons of them.
Knocking on doors, asking questions.
Trying to find any shred of evidence.
And they interviewed a ton of people, right?
Thousands, over 2,000 interviewed, hundreds investigated, dozens detained.
A massive undertaking.
And after the double murder, Stride and Eddowes on the same night, they offered a reward.
Trying to entice someone to talk.
It didn't work.
And then there was the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, right? Citizens taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah, frustrated with the police, they formed their own patrols.
Wow, like vigilantes.
Basically, they wanted to protect their community.
And they offered their own reward too, didn't they?
They did, showing how terrified everyone was.
Pressure was on.
To find this guy, to stop the killings.
And we see the beginnings of criminal profiling, right? With Thomas Bond, the police surgeon.
Yeah, he looked at the victims, the injuries, and tried to create a profile.
Like, what kind of person would do this?
Exactly. He thought the Ripper was a solitary man prone to these, quote, periodical attacks of homicidal and erotic mania.
That's pretty insightful for the time.
It was an early attempt to understand the criminal mind.
But even with all that, they never caught him.
The mystery remains.
And the list of suspects it's insane.
It's like everyone's a suspect.
From local butchers to royalty.
Even Queen Victoria's grandson was a suspect at one point.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's wild.
And of course, there's no DNA evidence from back then.
So we're left with theories and speculation.
And some pretty controversial attempts at DNA analysis in recent years.
Trying to link suspects like Aaron Kosminski or Walter Sickert.
But a lot of those have been debunked, right?
Yeah, the science isn't always clear-cut, especially with old, degraded evidence.
And then we have the letters, the Dear Boss letter, Saucy Jackie from hell.
They definitely added to the whole Ripper mystique.
They did, but most people think they were hoaxes, right?
Probably written by journalists to sell papers.
Like the timing of the Saucy Jackie postcard, it was just too convenient.
Right after the double murder, details already public knowledge.
So maybe not the Ripper after all.
It shows how much the media was involved.
Oh yeah, it was a media circus.
This was the era of mass circulation newspapers, and the Ripper case was front page news.
Everyone was reading about it.
It was global,
A worldwide sensation.
fueled by the press.
It wasn't always accurate reporting, was it?
No, there was a lot of sensationalism, a lot of fear-mongering.
And some pretty nasty xenophobic rumors.
Blaming immigrants, particularly Jews.
It's a reminder of how powerful the media can be.
For good or for bad.
It can shape public perception, and it can also hinder investigations.
Absolutely.
So the Ripper case is this turning point, right? For crime journalism, for how we consume news.
It set a precedent that we still see today.
The obsession with true crime, the sensationalized headlines,
It's all there in the Ripper case.
and the legacy of Jack the Ripper, it's complicated.
On the one hand, he's this terrifying bogeyman.
A symbol of evil.
He's been in movies, books, TV shows, you name it.
He's become this, like, cultural icon.
A dark icon.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the attention on Whitechapel did expose the awful conditions there.
The poverty, the overcrowding, the desperation.
It forced people to see it.
And maybe that led to some positive changes, some social reforms.
It's a strange legacy, a mix of horror and maybe some good.
And it's a legacy that endures.
People are still fascinated by Jack the Ripper.
Still trying to solve the mystery.
Still writing books, making documentaries, going on Ripper tours.
It's like he's never really gone away.
So we've explored the context, the murders, the investigation.
The suspects, the theories, the media frenzy.
We've gone deep into the heart of the Ripper case.
And now we turn it over to you, the listener.
What do you think? What aspects of this case do you find most unsettling, most intriguing?
And why do you think this unsolved mystery continues to fascinate us after all these years?
Let us know in the comments and join us next time for another deep dive.
Into history's darkest